I've been asked the question by many Chinese on Xiaohongshu. Why are expats not called immigrants? Isn't that what they are? And they were referring to one of my latest videos on the South African guy trash-talking China and referring to immigrants as expats. And that's exactly what they are. Immigrants. Now, you have to understand his audience. His audience are basically ones that look like him. European, white. And one thing that you'll notice, Europeans, especially the Anglo-Saxon ones, never refer to themselves as immigrants when they live overseas. They refer to themselves as expats. Basically, a legacy of colonialism. Whereas the word immigrant, especially in the West, has a negative connotation. You're not one of us. You're disgusting. You're just not like us. Basically, dehumanizing hard-working immigrants of all nationalities heading to Western countries. Whereas the word expat intentionally has a positive connotation. You're superior. You're better. You're one of us. You are basically white. Anyway, 蓝小好，我叫 Florida. 你呢？拜拜。
This is Senator John Kennedy talking about you can turn into this if eating foreign shrimps. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about alien. I'm an alien. I have an A number on my immigration document. We're just called alien. I know alien can mean two different things. This and this. For a lot of people, it's fine. But it's not fine. Because America is the only English-speaking country called immigrant alien. That says something. If asshole has two meanings, you don't want to be called asshole, even it has two meanings, because it associates with that other meaning. We don't want to be associated with this. Is that too much to ask? Change my alien number to immigrant number? Call us immigrant instead of alien? 老外 is what a lot of Chinese will refer to foreigners. It's actually a term of endearment. For example, people who don't know me very well will call me Mr. Liu, 刘先生 in Chinese. But people know me well will call me 老刘. That's close, much close. And when we chat, if we wouldn't call Mao Zedong Chairman Mao, we call him 老毛, just to show it's close. Whenever we add 老means old to anything, it just means something that we're familiar, like we don't want to show too distance. So 老刘, 老毛, 老外 is term of endearment. 老外, you don't understand.
Let me get this straight. When a brown or black person moves to the UK, immigrant. But when a white Brit moves abroad, expat. Same action, but different label. One implies dignity and the other a burden. Either we're all expats or we're all immigrants. Which one is it? Britain?
America lies to Asian immigrants. They say if you play by the rules, if you stay quiet, if you work hard, you'll be safe. Georgia just proved that that's a lie. ICE doesn't care. They want y'all too. So just a few days ago, right? The Hyundai battery plant. America's Pride Project, a $4 billion investment in the future. But you know who built it? Korean engineers. Skilled workers flown in to set up the tech that this country needs. And then, ICE. They stormed the plant. The largest single site raid in U.S. history. 475 people detained, handcuffed, lined up, faces in the dirt, not criminals, not illegals, legal workers. Targeted because some racist politician decided it would make a good campaign stunt. Oh yeah, just in case y'all didn't know, she's running for Georgia Senate. Just tell me that ain't the same America, just wearing different clothes. This isn't an accident. This isn't a one-off. This is the same America that passed the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was the first federal law banning people for just being Asian. The same America that locked up 120,000 Japanese Americans in concentration camps. And all this happened during World War II when their sons were sent to fight for this country. They've always had a script. Use Asian labor when it's convenient, criminalize them when it's not. From railroads to semiconductors, from farms to factories. It's the same exploitation. It is the same betrayal. And that's what this raid was really about. Not visas, not jobs. It was a message, a reminder that Asian immigrants aren't safe. It doesn't matter how legal your paperwork is, right? It doesn't matter if you're building the tech that America brags about to compete with China. The second they want to score political points, you become expendable. And while they spin it as law and order, the truth is clear. America doesn't see Asian immigrants as part of the family. It sees them as labor. And when the labor gets too visible, too powerful, or too foreign, ICE makes an example out of you. So don't buy the lie. Don't think the silence and the hard work protects you. Because this country has always found a way to remind Asian immigrants, you're not safe. You're not permanent. You're not untouchable. ICE wants y'all too. And Georgia just put that on full display.
Okay, so just a super quick unpopular opinion from someone who is an immigrant. Expat is like a fun word that people use to say like I moved to another country and it's so cool and I'm like a nomad and expat and whatever, but actually I'm an immigrant. I'm not an illegal one. I'm a legal immigrant in the UK right now. I'm originally from South Africa and I moved from there to Germany. I lived there for 5 years and I recently moved here to the UK. So yesterday, fun fact, there was a very big anti-immigration protest in London. I'm not super up to date with exactly like what's going on there and whatever. I just know a lot of people got hurt and it wasn't a pretty protest. It wasn't a super peaceful one. But something that to me as a white lady is unfair is the fact that people look at me as like someone who is in Europe. And when they look at me, because I'm white and because I have origins in Europe, like ancestors and whatever, people don't see me as an immigrant. They're like, oh, she's an expat, or it's like a fun little fact about me. But the moment that you don't have my skin color, suddenly you're an immigrant, or suddenly you are looked at differently than the other immigrants in this country. That's unfair. That's what I'm trying to say. I am just as much of an immigrant as someone who doesn't have my skin color. And if you feel someone else doesn't deserve to be here, even the legal like immigrants, then I also don't deserve to be here. Yeah. People need to get their shit together. It's been so unfair to me to have friends, especially also in Germany, where I lived in Berlin. It's a very like multicultural city. There are people who face racism there because they don't have white skin, and even though I also didn't belong there, I didn't face anything like that because I'm white and because I look like the people who are supposedly supposed to be there, if that makes sense. This is a positive message. I hope I'm getting that point across. Sometimes my words don't make a lot of sense. Also, hi, I'm Stefania and I am a high masking autistic, so sometimes I try to say things directly and I say them maybe too directly, so then they seem not insincere, what's that word? Insensitive. And I really don't mean them that way. I just mean them in a super sincere, honest way. It's unfair that people who look like me don't get seen as immigrants because we look like the people in the place where they're like, I think you get what I mean. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking now because I feel I'm talking myself into a hole.
Supreme Court has allowed people in ICE to racially profile anyone who doesn't look like an American. Ladies and gentlemen, I said it 100 times and I'll say it again. If you are anything but white, a white American, a white European, I guarantee you are not a citizen or an American of the United States. You are only granted the false ideologies of papers that will give you that sense of hope that you are an American citizen. Just because you are given papers that you are an American citizen does not mean you are an American citizen. Because this bill has given ICE and millions of white supremacies residing into the nation the ability to racial profile you. That means if you are African, Asian, Latino, or any other ethnical minority residing in the United States, there is a higher possibility of you being discriminated against and racially profiled. That means if ICE targets you, you will be sent to a concentration camp, and they will either figure out what to do with you, keep you there, and or send you back to whatever you may came from. This is why it's incredibly important for Latinos and Asian Americans to remember Asian American history. Because if you lack knowledge on Asian American and Latino American history, you was destined to fail. If you do not obtain history of the civil rights movements, you was also destined to fail. It does not matter if you are an immigrant. It does not matter if you came here after the civil rights movement. This history is still important to you. It does not matter if you have papers or marry into an American family. This history is still important to you. Whether you was here for this or not, this part of history is exactly what you are needed to know in order to keep the rights, the freedom, and the equality that you desperately wanted, which is the reason you came to the United States in the first place. If you go out of your way to neglect this history, you will lose it all. Your businesses, your schooling, your education, everything that you have built within the United States will be stripped away. Because you neglected civil rights history. You neglected Asian American Latino history because you thought it didn't relate to you. You thought it had nothing to do with you. I will say this one more time. Where you come from does not, under any circumstances, work in the United States. When you migrated to the United States, you actually crossed from a parallel world. What you believe in is the opposite of how it works here. Black people have tried to tell you, but you refuse to listen. So now you must learn the hard way and face the consequences of your actions. I can only hope that we get another chance at this. And maybe you guys will take this as an opportunity to educate yourselves. And like I said, it's not all of you, but for those who voted for this, I hope you have learned in some way, shape, or form.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the word expat. I think a lot of people criticize the word because it seems to mean something racist. For example, why is it only white people who can be expats, etc.? Why don't they call themselves immigrants once they are in another country for a long period or have settled there? And what's wrong with just using the same word immigrant? But I think there's some misunderstanding here of what is the meaning of the word. And a meaning of the word is how it's used, in my opinion. There's no intrinsic meaning to words. It doesn't matter what's in the dictionary. It's how people use it and how the people understand the word. For example, my wife and I, my wife's Korean, and we know a lot of people in the US who have recently come from either Japan or Korea to the United States. And I think it makes perfect sense to call them expats. I think if you were to say, these are Japanese expats, everyone would understand what you're talking about. You're talking about people who have moved voluntarily to the US from Japan, another first world country, and they could easily go back. They didn't come under duress. They didn't come for economic or political reasons. They came simply by choice. To me, the word means someone who could easily move back. It doesn't necessarily mean someone who is only in that country temporarily. They could easily have the intention to stay permanently, but still, they don't have to. It's like if I move to California, I can always move to another state, right? I can move to New York, at least so far. Immigrants to me are people like my own relatives who came earlier from another country, and they came when Japan was very poor or recovering from the war and so on. And I would say that the word immigrant applies to them. They came to the US under pressure. And now I don't think anyone comes from Japan with that kind of pressure. So immigrant just doesn't really apply to them, in my opinion, even if that word is technically accurate. And if the United States devolves or collapses or some horrible things happen, we in the US might feel like we have to escape to another country. Then we would become immigrants, in my view. We wouldn't be expats anymore. That, at least to me, is what the word means in terms of how people actually use the word.